Hey, Pulse Nation, Richard Garner here, host of a Third Way podcast, and of course, regular contributor here at the Pulse on all things media. First off, I want to start off with an apology. Last week, I misled you. I said that Joe Martino would be back this week, and in fact, he'll be back next week. So my apologies. So where would that rank on a 1 to 100 spectrum of deception? I would say pretty low, maybe a 1 or a 2, because obviously it was an honest mistake. Well, okay, if we were going to use that same sort of ranking system for our friends at the World Economic Forum in Davos, well, maybe in the past we would argue that they were pretty high on the deception scale. But these days, ladies and gentlemen, we've entered a new era because the hiding things in plain sight have been escalated to an entirely new level. So in fact, they no longer feel the need to deceive or to be deceptive or coded or cryptic with their language because most people now are on board with the agenda. So that you don't need to hide it anymore. You don't need to be behind closed doors in some sort of cabal. Everybody is just looking forward to all of these fantastic new developments to save the world from ourselves. And here's just one of the examples.
How many vaccinations do we need in the future?
It's a very good question. And I think, first of all, I think we will need vaccinations in the future, but also I'm concerned that the compliance of the population with the recommendations of the experts will not be very high. More people did the first dose, and then lesser did the second, and then lesser will do the third and the fourth. And so for that reason, we need to find a solution that makes it easy for people to get. And I think this solution, it is the number one priority is to have a vaccine that lasts a year. So once people know that it is once a year, I do it every autumn, for example, fall, I think that will improve the amount of people that are getting the vaccine.
Well, there you have it, folks, as Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla is telling old Santa Claus that these frustrating, pesky non-compliance can be somehow addressed by longer lasting vaccines to deal with all of these people who just will not simply do what we tell them to do and take their medicine. Well, you might say, okay, well, that's not that big of a deal, Richard. It's not like they're talking about, you know, some sort of tracking device.
Developing through technology an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean?
Yes, Mr. Davos, man. Please tell us what that means.
That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
Thanks for the warning. Well, there you have it, folks. These days, you no longer have to be cryptic with your proclamations about tracking devices. In fact, many people out there are like, wow, this is fantastic. They've developed new tech that will be able to track what I eat, where I go, what I do, and this will allow me to reduce my carbon footprint and somehow keep me safe and make the world a better place. So we've transcended the period where they had to sort of be coded about their language, about what the real agenda is. And now they can come out and openly talk about it because, you know, most people are out there kind of like, hey, did you hear what happened at the World Economic Forum recently, Sarah? No, I didn't, Jake. What are they talking about? I hope they're talking about tracking devices that could track everything I eat and where I go and what I do, because I really think it's about time we have something like that. Well, Sarah, get ready to be excited. And this is where we're at here. Like, this is the type of thing where, like we talked about last week, where you might be talking to somebody and saying, well, don't you remember me saying that this was what the agenda was, that we would be tracked or whatever? And you said I was crazy and paranoid for talking about these things and believing that there was some sort of nefarious agenda. And now the same people are saying, I don't know what you're talking about. In fact, I think you're just being paranoid because what they're doing now is in our best interest. And of course, very difficult to not feel gaslit in that particular context. But again, somebody might say, okay, well, a tracking device to reduce your carbon footprint, longer lasting vaccines, those aren't really things that we need to be worried about, Richard. It's not like they're talking about some sort of transhumanist singularity of putting tech in our body.
I wanted to ask when you all think we're going to move from this form factor to something that's on your face, glasses, and when computing's all on the edge.
All right, 50 seconds. Who wants to answer quickly?
Oh, I'll take a stab at that. How about inserting technology directly into our bodies for 800, Alex?
I think it will go. It will. First of all, it will definitely happen. I was talking about 6G earlier, which is around 2030. I would say that by then, definitely the smartphone as we know it today will not anymore be the usual kind of the most common interface.
Wow.
Many of these things will be built directly into our bodies.
I remember the first time I saw this video, I thought I had misheard it, because was the CEO of Nokia really just saying casually on a panel at the World Economic Forum that no, in fact, for sure, like the smartphone technology will now just be part of our bodies, an extension of our physical beings, and by 2030, and that there's no real pushback, there's no gasp, there's no people going, sorry, what? Because again, people were talking about this for years and saying that this was the eventuality, and those people were, dismissed, marginalized as crazy conspiracy theorists. Now these days, they know that the stigma for that is so strong, and they've so successfully stigmatized people that might be skeptical about this particular agenda as right-wing, Trump-supporting conspiracy theorists, that they don't have to hide it anymore. They don't have to be behind a curtain. They can come out and talk about it openly. And if you have a problem with it, you're the problem. So obviously, what choice does that leave the average person? Well, if I don't want to be considered a crazy conspiracy theorist and want to be considered somebody who's like a critical thinker, a smart person, well, obviously, I'm on board for this. I'm 100% on board. Can't wait for it to happen. So, okay, enough for today with the Davos crowd, the aristocrats of the 1% of the 0.1%. Maybe we can find some wisdom, some reassurance in one of the most esteemed authors, philosophers, academics of our time, the author of the transcendent book Species, Yuval Noah Harari.
The most important thing to know about living in the 21st century is that humans are now hackable animals. To hack a human being means to understand that human better than he or she understand themselves, which was never possible in history before on a massive scale. I mean, on an individual level, yes. My mother, at least until a certain age, knew me better than I knew myself. And that was good, because her interests were aligned with mine. And then after a certain age, it's not so good if your mother still knows you better than you know yourself. But it's much, much worse if there is a corporation or a government, rather than a parent, that knows you better than you know yourself.
Does it have to be worse?
Again, it could be used for good purpose. I'm not saying let's stop all technological progress. But if it falls into the hand of a 21st century Stalin, the result is the worst totalitarian regime in history. And we already have a number of applicants for the job of 21st century Stalin. So we need to be very, very careful about it.
Well, there you have it, folks. Again, not from, some sort of crazy alternative media person or somebody that's been marginalized or stigmatized as a conspiracy theorist or as paranoid. This is from somebody who's, by all accounts, well respected by the establishment, by the mainstream, as a philosopher, as an author. And he is pointing out that his concerns with AI are not just for 10, 20 years down the line. He's talking about AI right now manipulating us by delivering us what we don't even know we want. And that's because it's designed by the biggest companies in the world to do exactly that. This is 1.0, people. And as he's pointing out, what's the 2.0 and the 3.0 going to be able to do in terms of hacking us, manipulating us, controlling us? And again, you might say, well, that sounds crazy, but this person that's talking about has not been considered that, I guess, until now, because now he's talking about things that many of us have been talking about for a long time. So what does this mean? Well, I'm not sure what it means, especially for the people that have been worried about this particular agenda manifesting for years and decades. It means, at least to me, that it's no longer behind closed doors. It's out in the open, which can only mean, in my opinion, that things are being accelerated at a pace we haven't seen before. But that's just my opinion. As far as my deception about Joe Martino, he will be back, I guarantee you, next week, and we'll see what Joe has to say about all things Davos, World Economic Forum, and everything going on in the world. Until then, I will see you next time. Thank you.